Welcome to Transformative Principal, where I help you stop putting out fires and start leading. I'm your host, Jethro Jones. You can follow me on Twitter at Jethro Jones. I'm launching a new website, transformativeprincipal.com. You can go there to learn about and join the mastermind. And also, you can go there to learn how to get positive press for your school. What's better than you telling your story all the time? Getting other credible third parties to tell your story for you. Go to transformativeprincipal.com. Once again, that's transformativeprincipal.com. Welcome to Transformative Principal. I'm so excited to have my good friend Kelly Hellams on the podcast today. She's an elementary school principal at Summit Drive Elementary in Greenville, South Carolina. She is leading her school in a new focus of leadership and entrepreneurial design. She's been teacher and administrator for 23 years and has explicit background in creating lessons and opportunities for elementary students in economic education. She was a contributor of Focus economics lessons for grades 3 through 5 and worked with other educators from Russia and Europe on hands-on activities related to fundamental economic concepts. Kelly, welcome to Transformative Principals. So happy to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here, Jethro.
Well, this is fantastic because you and I have been talking for months about what you're going through at your school. You're rebuilding part of it, and you're taking a new design thinking focus to the school, and it's just exciting. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing and what's going on. What are the big things that you're thinking about?
Right. So Jethro, we started talking about this focus probably 2 or 3 years ago. And we wanted to create something that was unique for the students in Greenville County. Our school district we have about 51 elementary schools, 51 elementary schools. And so we're a very large district. We wanted to come up with something that was unique, that would attract students to our school. And one of the things that was fascinating about Greenville is that right now it has really jumped with this entrepreneurial focus in the city itself. And in fact, in a Bloomberg report, it stated that Greenville is actually the new startup South, and it's hit a successful formula for incubating businesses. So with that, we wanted to have something that children would be excited about, that parents would be attracted to. So we came up with this idea of entrepreneurial design. What we were doing prior to was we were a Leader in Me school. And so for 3 years, our students learned all about the 7 habits, Franklin Covey. And we wanted to do something that enhanced that leadership idea. So we came up with leadership and entrepreneurial design because they really went hand in hand and they meshed well together. So what we did was a lot of research around that. We went on a couple of school visits. We visited a school in North Carolina that was a school of leadership and entrepreneurial design. We also visited 2 schools in San Diego that were also schools of design. So we needed to find something that we could do here within our school, but we needed to know what that looked like. So we felt like it was essential to go to some other schools that were doing something similar so that we would have an idea of what it looked like.
Yeah, and you went to Design 39 and Vista Visions Academy, right? Was it Vista Visions or Vita?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Vista. It was the Vista Innovation and Design 39.
Yeah, Vita. Okay. So those, I've interviewed the principals of both those schools on this podcast and went and visited them as well. So Eric Shigala and Joe Erpelding, not George Erpelding. That's probably somebody else. So interviewed both those guys on the podcast, and they did some amazing work there and really cool stuff. And also interviewed the founder of Design 39, Sonia Risley. And so those I'll put links to those in the show notes, because if you haven't gone down this path yet, those are 3 great interviews that really give you an idea of what is out there and what people are doing. And there's some really cool stuff that's happening already. So can you talk a little bit about how the 7 Habits and the Leader in Me program dovetails into this entrepreneurial design thing that you're talking about?
Yeah, so we felt like we had grasped the Leader in Me concept of the 7 habits, meaning the 7 habits are basically be proactive, think win-win, think of others, first, which is that empathy piece. So we felt like our students were really developing those leadership skills, learning from the inside out, which is commonly referred to in Leader in Me, is that the students first have to understand themselves, their own identity, making and setting goals for themselves, and then developing into working with others. So, working to synergize, working with a group, working as a team. So all of those, what we call those soft skills, intertwined well with entrepreneurial design and those entrepreneurial mindsets. And that's what we have developed here, is not necessarily thinking that all students will grow up to run a business, but what our idea is for students to know and walk away with is having the mindsets of an entrepreneur. Meaning, have courage to try something new. Don't be afraid to do something different. Other ideas might be to have teamwork or to show teamwork. Because teamwork, when working together, helps to develop a new idea. Having resilience. So many of our children nowadays, they, have a tendency to say, "Oh, I can't do it," and they give up. But teaching children to have resilience and have perseverance, to work through challenges, are all ways of showing those mindsets of an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and one of my friends, his name's Jake, he just shared with me what he thought his idea of resilience was, which I found really interesting. And he said that resilience is about knowing that you have the power within you to overcome the challenges that you're facing. And so resilience doesn't mean that you are a victim all the time and that you're blaming others. It means that you have the power within you to come up with a way to do whatever it is you need to do better so that you can overcome the challenges that you're facing. And I just thought that that was a really good way to look at it, and a way that it was a little different than what I had been thinking about it. And I like how what you're saying, that entrepreneurial mindset is so important, because it's not about being business minded. It's about being confident that you can solve problems. And so whether you get a job for someone or you start your own business, being entrepreneurial means I can solve problems, not just by myself, but I don't have to wait for somebody else to do it for me. And that's what I really like about that approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And with the 7 habits linking with resilience, for example, the idea of being proactive as opposed to reactive. And Stephen Covey often talks about don't carry your weather. You don't need to be affected by your environment. And that's that growth mindset. So really that growth mindset, it sounds like what you're talking about, of not necessarily being a victim, but also seeing the challenges as opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that a lot. So let's talk about your way that you've defined design thinking, which is a little bit different, what I love about schools is when they take something that's out there and then they say, how do we make this work for us? And I am not a fan of the phrase you have to implement with fidelity, because that means that you're doing somebody else's vision, and we in schools need to have our own vision. You've definitely taken that. And so you've created a different way of looking at the design thinking process that is with the acronym LEAD. So tell us about that and how that works.
Mm-hmm. We wanted to take a lot of the design thinking concept and from the bigger, more well-known design thinking concept and make it something that our students could relate to. And we know we're talking children in kindergarten through 5th grade at our schools. So we wanted something that spoke to children very simply, but also met really what the design thinking process was all about. So we looked at the idea of the acronym LEAD, because it kind of came from our idea of leadership, which our children knew about, since we had been a leader in me school for several years. And so we wanted to come up with words that help to define some. I'm trying to minimize it here so I could kind of look and pull you through. But the lead, we wanted the L to be listen, because empathy is truly actively listening to your end user. And so we wanted something that our children could connect with. And we felt like the word listen was such a simple but yet powerful word to use as part of the process for our children. And just the whole logo itself, we wanted also something that would have a very simple icon that would go along with it. We had the heart, because we felt like the heart was a good representation of when you're listening not just with your ears, but you're listening with your heart, which goes, along well with that empathy piece. And, with that, we went into explain to represent the defining idea of how do you define the problem? How do you explain it? So again, we wanted to have something that would be representation of explain, which was the light bulb, and then the act, which is the prototyping, ideating, really coming up with the meat itself of what it is that you're designing. And then, of course, the deliver piece, because we know how important it is to deliver and communicate your idea. And that's where you can get so many of those ELA standards is in that deliver piece, because so many times you can come up with an idea, but can you explain your idea to others? And so whether it be communicating it through writing or speaking, we felt like the deliver was important as in itself too. We also wanted to come up with something that was nonlinear, because we know that design thinking there's certain aspects. For example, you could be in the deliver piece and then you have to go back into the listening. And so it's refining whatever it is that you're creating for the end user. And we've walked that and have experienced ourselves, where we might get to what we think is the end product, and then we realize, no, we're not quite there yet. We have to go back and we have to either ideate, we have to test it, we have to, go back to one of those. So it's not something that it's one and done, which I love also about this design thinking model is it's always a work in progress.
Yeah, it really is. And I used the analogy of a staircase in my book, School X, about the design thinking process, that as you go up the next step, you do go past where you were, but it's not that you just repeat the same steps. It's the same thing over and over and over again, but you just have more knowledge and more experience and more expertise to help you understand what you really need to do to deliver that end product. And what I like about this different approach that you're using is that the listen, explain, act, deliver also is the acronym LEAD, of course, which is good. And that is a leadership process to go through the design thinking process. And it also expands it to be about more than creating a product, which sometimes we think that's what it's all about. And in schools, it's not necessarily about that. John Catt Educational supports high-quality teaching and learning by providing publications that are research-based, practical, and focused on the key topics proven essential in today's and tomorrow's schools. The latest John Catt publications include a book whose bold, transformative ideas amaze and infuriate people around the world, according to one reviewer, a title from global leaders in curriculum planning, practice, and retrieval, one book that says stop talking and start doing with regard to teacher well-being, and much more. These books, used by educators of all roles across North America and worldwide, amplify fresh, engaging voices with practical strategies to create transformative change. Learn more in our show notes at jethrojones.com/podcast. How does this also support that idea of not just creating a product, but finding a problem to a solution that may not involve any active creation, but maybe just some creative problem solving? Does that question make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. Because, initially, even when I went through exploring entrepreneurial design, I used to think that it was about creating a product. And now I realize that so much of the design thinking process we do every day in our lives as educators, as just even in our personal lives. And now I see how it's applied everywhere. When I'm even working with teachers, we're always designing. And it's designing the lesson plans. It's designing the unit. What does it look like? And I refer to our teachers as designers. So when I am working with them on, if I'm sending out a newsletter, it's, hello designers, because they don't write a lesson plan, they design a lesson plan. And so now they start to see that it's not necessarily creating an object, but it's also creating whatever it is that you want to develop within your school. Or, it could be a program. It could be, some kind of special evening for parents and students. And what do we want it to look like? So it doesn't necessarily have to be an object.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that really opens you up to doing all kinds of different things and to have this entrepreneurial solving problems type of mindset in your school. So where are you at in the stage of implementing all this, and what are you working on right now as it relates to it?
Mm-hmm. So last year we had training. We have had the privilege of working with a local university called Furman University here in Greenville, and it's actually just 10 minutes up the road. And they have a program of entrepreneurial and innovation. And so they were able to come to our school and provide training to our staff on design thinking. And so we did that last year. And then over the summer, we did training with the teachers on creating lesson plans that they could do. So what we've tasked them for this semester was to create a unit on design thinking, and they could do it through their science and social studies content areas. And they did a phenomenal job with it. What we wanted to do is we wanted to come up as a leadership team with something that was attainable. We felt like having them start small by just coming up with one unit on design thinking for this semester and then one for next semester. It was attainable, and it was something that wasn't overwhelming to them. We had that formal training, and then they had a chance to try it out this semester with their students.
Yeah, and Kelly, starting small is so important. I mentioned to you before we started recording that I was out in Wisconsin doing a training about student-driven learning, and we started with something that was so simple. I had people coming up to me during the training and saying, because we were just talking about voice and choice, and that was the first step. And I said, so we just have to have an aspect of voice and choice? Like, I feel like I already do this. And I said, well, let's talk about it a little bit more. And we'd find out that sure enough, they were already doing something like that. And so instead of it being, we're doing this big, huge change to be something totally different, it's, well, let's just start small. One unit or lesson on design thinking, or one unit or lesson on implementing voice and choice. Like, you don't have to make these huge monumental changes. And what I found with that is that once people see that you're going slow, then they have permission to go fast if they're ready. And so nobody is going so slow that they can't keep up because you're going very slow as you're setting the pace. But then other people, when they're ready, then they can keep going further and further. And I'm sure that you've already had some teachers who are like, I can teach this and then we can start doing it in all of our classes. And that's not even your expectation yet, but you're starting to see that people are already going to that step. Are you seeing that yourself?
Yes, it's amazing, because the teachers are actually getting very excited because they're getting to go at their own pace. It's not something that they're looking at and saying, oh, here's one more thing, or here's, we're on the newest and whatever initiative it is now that's going to be gone in a year. What I love about the design thinking and this whole concept is that the teachers really feel that it's why they went into teaching. And teaching in this way, it's bringing us back to our why. Why did we go into education? Because we want to make a difference in the lives of our children. And so this is getting so far beyond the standards, because it's making an impact on students. And it's, not about standardized tests. It goes so much more, so much deeper than that. And so that's why I feel like our teachers have really embraced it. One of the things that we specifically love about design thinking more than some other process skills is that empathy piece. It's really designing for the end user. And, in the teacher's case, it's the end user being her students when she's designing those lessons. And for the students, when they're creating whatever product it is or idea, they're thinking about others. And it's just such a meaningful opportunity for our kids and for our teachers to know that you're creating something that's going to make a difference. And our school, our tagline is Leaders Changing the World. And I said, to the teachers, I don't want that just to be a tagline with a name. I want us to be a school where we really stand by that through examples of what we set forth for our children.
Yeah, I love that. So you mentioned something that you glossed over because you know it, but not everybody does know it. And that is that when you do these kinds of things differently, design thinking process, student-driven learning, when you do it differently, then kids do go beyond the standards, not as a theoretical, like, oh, that's all well and good, but when I was leading my school like this, I had seventh graders who were going up into the high school standards and mastering and showing proficiency in those standards way before they should have ever, quote unquote, been ready for those standards. And that's what's so amazing, is that it takes away the standards actually constrain us and make us stop. So quick illustration about this. If you are in an elementary school and you tell a kid that they need to know what 2 plus 2 is, and that's your standard, is to do addition up to 10, so they can add up all those numbers up to 10. Well, if that's what you're going for, once kids get there, you're going to say, okay, that kid got it, and I can move on to the next thing, or they can move on to the next thing, or whatever. But if you take a different approach, rather, and you're doing a design thinking process or a student-driven learning process, and you find a way to help them accomplish something, they may learn what multiplication is in first grade because they're ready for that. And that's not where they're supposed to be, but that's where their questions and where their experiences are leading them to. And it's very possible for kids to blow way past the expectations that we have for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, that's so true. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And one of the things that is so exciting about the design thinking is just what you said. It gives them that real world element because, a lot of the projects are real world based. And so when they see that what they're learning in the classroom has application, they do want to take it further because they have the questions in their mind of, well, why do I need to learn this? Why do I, need to add 2 plus 2? What is the purpose? Give me some examples in the real world of how I use those skills. And so, I think that when you give them these opportunities and these chances to go out there and really make some meaningful differences, they want to excel and they want to keep fostering that learning that you're talking about.
Yeah. And what's so cool is to watch it happen. And especially when you see kids who haven't been engaging in school and haven't been interested in what the teacher's doing, and they suddenly get all passionate about something and say, I've got to figure this out and I'm going to spend extra time doing it. It's amazing to see that happen. So in closing, what is one thing that a principal can do this week to be a transformative principal like you, Kelly?
I think just being passionate about education and really understanding the why. And really, I think that's something that sometimes we get lost in as educators and as leaders is you lose your why. And I think it's important to circle back and always use that as your driving force for making decisions.
Yeah, great insight. Well, thank you so much for being here, Kelly. I'm excited to see your journey as your school goes and progresses down this path. It's going to be so much fun to watch. And hopefully you'll come back on and update us as things continue to grow.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Jethro. This was a great conversation.
Yes, as it always is with you. Thank you.